Good morning. I hope that even those in California at 7 a.m. have decided to join me this morning because I have a magnificent guest that I'm going to be interviewing today. He has a lot of just really good, juicy information if you are interested in film projects, documentary, but also he has led a very, very interesting life. So I'll be bringing him to you in just a moment. But this is my second show today, and I'm really excited about that because not only will I be talking about what most of you are used to me talking about, which are grants and the nonprofit arena, but Beverly Hills to Barnyard, which is the title of the show, is, is a show that is talking about who are you and what makes you tick. When are you making decisions to pivot into doing something new? Because so many of us, we hesitate. We worry about starting something new. And so that's what Beverly Hills to Barnyard is about. And I just am so excited to be coming to you every week, every Wednesday, 7 a.m. Pacific, 8 a.m. Mountain, 9 a.m. Central, and 10 a.m. Eastern for those of you that will be listening to the recording even later. And so, but I want to jump right into my very special guest because George Folkes, not only has he become a very dear friend, he has made a very huge impact in his life with so many others, even Spike Lee. George Folkes was one of Spike Lee's original mentors when they were both attending Morehouse College. So let me tell you a little bit about my very special guest. Mr. Folkes is a producer, educator, lecturer, and humorist. He is acclaimed for his one-man show, having received invitations to perform and lecture at over 50 notable colleges and universities in 23 states and the District of Columbia. George is the founder of Gentle Drop Cinema, based in Atlanta, Georgia. He founded the company to produce films about Black families, to preserve their legacies, and to make unsung achievement and honor it in film. Originally from the South Bronx, and you will hear that in his amazing voice, George is a graduate of Morehouse College, where he studied filmmaking and mass communications. He also attended the School of Cinematic Arts at the University of Southern California to further his studies in the art of motion picture producing. So without further ado, I want to welcome my very special guest, Mr. George Gentle Folkes. Hello, handsome.
How you doing? How you doing?
I'm doing really great. I'm so glad to have you on. I love the fact that we can be in different parts of the country and connect so clearly because of my wonderful host and a studio, WCEG. So what's going on with you this morning?
Just feeling the vibe of the energy and the enthusiasm of new projects, of sustaining good relationships, and motivated by the energy of my people out of Alabama, particularly out of Montgomery, and the effort to stand united when it comes to somebody who's done something wrong, and you know what's right, and then you stand up for right in the eyes of the Constitution.
And
I'm a fan
George,
of the Constitution.
yes, and George, with you saying that, and we're on the heels of what just happened, what's all over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
At 68, what do you think is the number one problem when you look at the Black community, first of all?
Well, the number one problem in the Black community is citizenship. You have to take citizenship on multiple levels so that when you look at it, it's neighborhood citizenship, it's citywide citizenship, statewide citizenship, have pride in your state, regional citizenship, and then national, and then international. You have to take it to every one of those levels, consider each one of them like a stack of pancakes. But at the end of the day, you have to try to work on being a global citizen so that no matter where you go on the planet, you will represent the highest level of integrity within human beings, but you'll represent what we stand for as a proud nation of red, white, and blue. And that means you can go anywhere. and represent and handle your business. But first, you
Mm-hmm.
must be a neighborhood citizen. You must be good to the people in your neighborhood. That's our problem. If we master that and we master customer service with that,
Mm-hmm.
then we'll be off the chain.
Yeah. And with you talking about customer service, I want to touch on that a little later, but I have one more question. What do
Mhm.
you think is the number one problem with America as a global nation?
You don't want to really live the Constitution. You want to read it, but you don't want to live it. You can't read it and then not live it. What did King say? You can't write no check that you can't cash. So you
Yeah.
have a brilliant doctrine document. That document has to be something that you embody and you live. And if
Mm,
you live that as all Americans, then you're fine. I want to say
mm,
this to you about an underlining behavior in America that you have to address.
yeah,
If you teach all of the children to be the very, very best, if it's 100 children and you teach all 100 to be the best human being they can be, you have no idea, according to Dr. Benjamin Mays, former president of Morehouse College, you have no idea who God is going to pick for greatness. But when he
mm,
does pick one, they will not be inadequate, nor will they be failing at taking on the mission because they've been well prepared academically. We must educate all children in America to be the finest human beings they can be because we
mm-hmm,
don't know who's going to get picked for greatness.
mm-hmm,
Nobody knows.
mm-hmm. That's a great response. You mentioned Morehouse and
Yes,
your time at Morehouse, and who I touched on a little bit, Spike Lee.
yes.
Give us a little bit of history about your time at Morehouse and how that truly spearheaded you in the direction that you have been living.
Okay. I was in prep school in a program called A Better Chance. And I had originally gone to school in Connecticut and didn't like it. And some loving people in my program called Broad Jump, which is the finest program in the history of the state of New York
Mm-hmm.
for urban young males. No program has ever done what Broad Jump has done to this day. And so out of this 125 boys, they wound up finding me a school in Watertown, Massachusetts. And the school only had like 80 students. And I decided, okay, well, I'll go. And it turned out to be a wonderful experience. As a
Hmm.
result of going to that school, my
How
senior
old were
year,
you? I'm sorry. Oh,
I was
okay.
about 17
Okay.
when I got ready, 16 when I went, 18 when I graduated. But my senior year, I was 17, and I wound up living at Harvard University with some distinguished, high-powered brothers and sisters from the 70s. I mean, Dr.
Mm,
Mary Bassett, Steve Pitts, Clement Cans. These were heavyweights at Harvard in the 70s, associating with Tony Jenkins, James Brown. All these people were Harvard folks, and
mm,
Lily Bundles, Marilyn Cessporters. I was a high school kid. And
mhm,
so Marilyn Cessporters was from my neighborhood. She's from the Bronx. And so um, Clement Cans was coming up the steps one day in this mansion that we lived at on Sacramento Street, and he handed me a book. And when he handed me the book, he said, read that, youngin'. He used to call me high school kid. He
uh-huh.
said, high school kid, read that. So I read the book. I was blown away. I discovered the incredible Dr. Mays, and I was reading about Paul Robeson. And I said, this guy was phenomenal, but Dr. Mays runs a school of all Black men in Atlanta. Then I
Mm,
realized that that's where Dr. King went to school. And
mm,
then the president of Clark, Dr. Vivian Henderson, was creating a school of communications. Maynard Jackson was running for mayor. And I looked at everybody in Boston and said, I'm going to go to school in Atlanta, study communications at Clark, be a Morehouse man, and of course, get a chance to talk to the beautiful sisters at Morris Brown, Clark, and Spelman.
oh yeah, that
It's
that was just a little bit of a plus, right?
Yeah, we weren't gonna leave that out for General. No, we weren't gonna leave that out. That was gonna be the icing on the cake. And
Right, right.
it turned out to be a phenomenal experience. So there was a
Mm,
brother from Cleveland who was in the Better Chance program, who was rooming with Spike. And he was Spike's roommate his sophomore year, our sophomore year. We both came in, OT and I, Adisa and I came in the same time in 74. So we used to have milk and cookie meetings at night and solve all the problems of the universe.
Yeah.
I mean, we got deep, every time his mother sent a box, we had cookies and milk, and we just, throw down because we were both ABC students. So the second year, we were still continuing the activity. And he said, is there any way you could help my roommate? He's from New York and he wants to get into the communications program. I said, I'll be happy to mentor him. He said, yeah, well, okay, I'm gonna introduce you to him. And when I met him, I liked him. I thought he had a great sense of humor. I knew he was from Brooklyn. I was from the boogie down Bronx. And I decided that, I will show you the ropes, but more importantly, I will position you so that eventually you could get, you can get in Hollywood. And I just thought we had a phenomenal work ethic within the college journey that would allow you to then position yourself once you left there to do what you needed to do. But we were highly professional. And the great Bill Nunn, who passed away, Radio Raheem, who also starred in New Jack City and the Sister Act films. Bill Nunn and I were sitting in '96 at a bar in downtown Atlanta, and he said to me, "Your work ethic, your team, man, I didn't even realize y'all were students. Y'all were so professional in the way y'all did things."
Yeah.
And I had been a mentor, from the time I grew up in the Bronx with the boys on the block in the Hunts Point area. So mentoring was easy for me because by the time I got to Morehouse, I had 10 Ivy League mentors.
Well, I'm going to show a picture later where you have demonstrated even visually that you were going to be a true leader. But you know what? A question comes to mind about you guys and your cookies and at night. Why is it that people that are in the entertainment industry, whether it's music, whatever, work at night? Everything happens at night. I am so blessed to have you on right now this early because I know you're not a morning person.
That is true. Most
Why
people
is
who
it
know
at
me know.
night?
There's something about the calmness of the evening and everybody else kind of finishing their day and they're no longer on the airwaves of the universe, in a matter of speaking. And the night is just calm and you can kind of flow and you can just kind of create. During my LA days, I used to love the nights and good time to have meetings, good time to have rehearsals, just a wonderful time to get clarity on what you're working on creatively. It's a nice touch. And I think those who work at night, those who are creative at night, are able to really hone in on whatever the creative message is that's flowing that you want to express. You're able to really, get to the essence of that. Yeah, I used to go to rehearsal with my buddy who was the tour manager for Jeffrey Osborne, Thad Edwards. He died, Morgan State graduate. And Thad and I, this is literally the truth, would meet like around 11 and we would hang till like 4 a.m. And that was Jeffrey and Osborne and his band would be working out whatever they were doing in that airport hangar in Los Angeles. And we would just have fun till 4 a.m. It became one of the things that we started doing regularly because I helped him through the night. And then me and him just had good time laughing and talking, having a good time. Yeah,
Well,
the night is the special time for a lot of artists.
Well, I'm going to show my screen because I just want to get to, let me see, share screen. I want to get to this. Come on. This was supposed to go real smooth. This little man here. I love this picture of you.
Yeah, yeah. I
George
think this
Folkes.
was somewhere around four 4 or 5, somewhere in there, maybe
Mm-hmm.
even younger. But my aunt, Winnie Rose, was the executive secretary at the Apollo for 19 years
Mm-hmm.
with Mr. Schiffman. And right on 125th Street, there was a photographer. And for some reason, my mother decided that, being a Harlem girl, that she would take her children to this particular photo shop.
Uh-huh.
Somebody out there probably knows where the photo shop was. But, my mother took me, I had my tie, my vest on, and the man said to me, take a stand. And I put my hands in my pocket and I just smiled.
And you can remember that day so clearly, like yesterday,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I can remember that day because I remember the vest. And
Yeah.
I put the vest on with the pants, and it was one of them moments that you just, I remember early childhood stuff that
Man,
people
you
would
was,
go,
uh-huh. I'm sorry.
people would say, how do you remember that? I just remember, I remember trying to take the screen off the TV to get the moped that was on The Price is Right. I went in the kitchen and got a knife and came back, and I was putting the knife on to the screen to take the screen off so I can go inside the TV and get the moped. And my mother and my mother, an island woman from St. Croix, my mother checked me quickly. What are you doing, child? No, 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 put the knife down. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
So,
let's talk a little bit about your R's that are pictured here on the
okay.
picture.
All praise is due to my dear director, Vernon Bennett, who helped to create the one-man show from the original. The one-man show was an accident. We were going to do a two-man show, and the other person didn't work out. So we dismissed them. And I was standing on stage, and Vernon looked at me and he said, I guess we could do a one-man show. I said, well, about what? And he said, one-man show about women. And he said, you know a lot about women, so why don't we do a one-man show about women? And I
Mm-hmm.
thought Vernon was insightful. And for the next 3 weeks at USC, every single night, we put together 150 entities to the show. Eventually, we only came down to 25 that we used nationally. And at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the show, we felt that the 90-minute show should have a 10-minute conclusion of something meaningful, because a lot of people don't know now, but back then the title of the show was Putting Women in Their Place Beside Their Men.
Mm.
But we left out a word, putting women in their place beside their little men, because we were going to tell you the 6 secrets of character, but we didn't want to give you the modifier, so we left it out. And so college women from all over the country were like, bring him, and we want to check him. We'll see what he's talking about. You're going to put women in their place. They
Uh-huh.
thought it was important to, bring us. The men loved it. They were like, yeah, he's going to come and check y'all. So we never had to really do heavy marketing because the show title sold the show
Mm-hmm.
across the nation. And then, as was said to me many years ago, low expectation, high delivery.
Ah.
So we kept the show as a low expectation, but when I got on stage, it was 80 minutes of pure comedy. And then the last 10 minutes were the 6 R's to manhood. And this is where
Mm.
we would talk about respect, rules of life, religion, responsibility of the penis, role models, and then romance.
Mm.
And we would drop that in 10 minutes, and then we would close the show.
Ah. And that was the start of your one-man show.
Yeah, that was that, that was it. Once we finished it and kept it in LA all of 86,
Uh-huh.
fall of 87, we took it on tour. And that
Mm.
was, that was because of Vincent Stovall out of Cleveland, Morehouse man who was at Bowie State, who said,
Mm-hmm.
I can get you at Bowie, but I could also get you at University of Maryland with Craig Harris, and we can get you a double hit in the DMV, in the
Mm.
DC area. And we had 1,200 people come out at the University of Maryland to see me, and I was only second to Dick Gregory in attendance 2 years in a row. That
Wow.
that that launch pad was absolutely something we had no idea that we were going to take off like that.
Wow. Wow. Well, here you're speaking at Clark Atlanta University. Tell me the story behind this picture.
Well, that yearbook is the actual year that I graduated, 78.
Mhm.
And the team that put together that yearbook had done just a fabulous job.
Mhm.
But there was a very popular journalist that was in our class who wound up being beloved by the city of Atlanta, Amanda Davis. And I just happened to go to the annual event to talk about Amanda, but to also talk about our era. Because, life is about eras. You know, Muhammad Ali's era in boxing is different than Terrence Crawford's era in boxing. So our era in the 70s was off the chain, but
Mm.
Clark had the best food in the Atlanta University Center among all the schools. And
Mm.
the dietitian who had been there like over 31 years, her team was featured in the book, which in most yearbooks, you wouldn't see the cafeteria team.
Right.
But the food at Clark was so good that they put the cafeteria team with smiling and everything in the book along with the
Uh-huh.
dietitian. And I mentioned that to the audience that the cafeteria team is in the yearbook. And I just thought that was HBCU love for the fact that we love the food at the cafeteria. I mean, it was like going to your grandmama's house. It
Yeah.
wasn't like going to cafeteria. It was straight. They doing chicken today at Clark. Oh, the fried chicken was off the chain. And just the love of the staff and the director and just good people. I mean, there's
Yeah.
something really special about Clark College, which is now CAU. But when we were in school, Clark College was a unique, special place between young Black men and Black women. Nothing but love.
Well, and that was a very um poignant thing to do because it almost will make a person feel when they're feeling lonely and they can taste something that tastes like home,
Come on now.
even through the palate that can keep someone there, can make them feel a calmness that they probably need. It can calm the spirit. It can, because when I was working with a nonprofit about 15 years ago, do you
Okay.
know that some of the one of the main reasons that college kids drop out of college is loneliness? It's not
I
even
could
their
see that.
grades. It's not, it's loneliness. It's missing home. And
Yeah.
if they're not making those friends, if they can just look forward to the cafeteria,
Come on now.
that
Come
can
on.
make a difference, right?
Yes.
But look, we're
Yes.
moving along. So I want to cover a couple of things. Now, for our listeners, this man is so magnificent that we're going to have two segments. If you didn't see that in the advertisement, we're having him on today, of course, and then he's coming back to us on the 30th. And so if we run out of time, because he has a lot to say, a lot to share, but I want to make sure that we cover today this documentary that you have created about Jenny Battle. Give us a little bit of information about her and why you created this documentary.
I was fortunate enough to hang out with one of Miss Battle's sons through my days at Morehouse,
Mm.
but he never mentioned that his mother had worked for Kennedy. And we had been good friends, even to the point that when I lived in LA, Christmas and Thanksgiving, he would take me with his family to the relatives, and then I would actually eat like I was home. So I would ask for thirds. You got to hear me now. I wouldn't ask for first, second, but I go for thirds.
Uh-huh.
And his aunts and them said, "Ooh, that boy, that boy from Morehouse that went to school with you, that boy is greedy, or he can eat." But then they happened to tell Glenn's father, I thought he was brilliant. And so when I finally met Mr. Battle, he started drilling me, and I couldn't understand why he was drilling me, And I said to Mr. Battle, well, why are you asking me these questions? He says, well, he assumed that I knew his wife had worked for John F. Kennedy, and I didn't know because his son Glenn, who went to Morehouse with me, he never mentioned it to me.
Mm.
So I said to Mr. Battle, your wife worked for the president of the United States of America? He said, yes. And he said, I'd like somebody to tell her story. I said, well, I'm not a writer, sir. I'm a filmmaker. He said, well, could you make a movie about her? I said, I could if I met her. And he said, um, well, we live in DC and all of that. And I said, well, when is her birthday? And he said, October 17th. And that was a light bulb that went off in my head because I'm a Libra. So I was like, I'll come to DC if you invite me. He said, you're invited. I came to DC and they didn't let me stay at a hotel. They let me stay at the house with them.
Uh-huh.
And it just so happened Glenn came up from I don't know if he was in Atlanta or if he was in Orlando, but Glenn came up to DC and it was great. And I spent time bringing my camera and I set it up in the living room next to her TV. And she just sat in the chair, started talking and telling me stories. And then I rewound the tape on the camera and put it on the screen. And she saw herself and she said, "Oh, that looks nice."
Well,
And by
doggone
midnight,
it, George. We're
by
down
by
to, go ahead. We're down to 5 minutes. I wanted, we're going to have to put a hard stop. First, I want to, and we can jump back to you, but I want you to give people how they can reach out to you instead of waiting to our next segment. How can they contact you?
well, they can reach us at 678-913-4582, and you can call Gentle Drop Cinema. And the film is free, but you just have to pay expenses if you want to host the film anywhere in the United States.
And you hear that, everyone. We're going to get back on this conversation and a whole lot more, but I've let the time go. George is just so captivating, George, and but we just have a couple of more minutes. So remember to contact George. Don't wait until our next segment. George, give your phone number again.
That's 678-913-4582, and you're reaching out to Gentle Drop Cinema.
Okay. George, I'm going to leave this picture up as I talk about closing out. Again, we will feature George. I'm sorry to just stop in the middle. I just looked at my producer's message that we were getting to the close. George, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I'm sorry that I had to interrupt right here in the middle of your conversation. For all of you that have been listening, thank you so much for tuning in to us today. George is, again, a dear friend. He's done some amazing things already. He's talking about his Jenny Battle film documentary. I'm going to be bringing him to Arkansas. We're already talking about a date to have a premiere here. I'm going to introduce him to a dear friend of mine there in Los Angeles, Dr. Anthony Samad, so he can bring it there to LA. You guys get ready on the West Coast. Get ready. George, again, thank you for coming on with me today. And you guys join us next week. On the 30th. Again, I'll be bringing back this wonderful gentleman, and we were going to talk about grants as far as film. I'm having a podcast on that. We can talk about film on the 17th, which is National Nonprofit Day. So I will be sending that out on my Facebook. And George, again, I hated to be so rude and cut you off right in the middle, but I'm looking forward to our conversation again. Thank you again for everyone. Thank you, WCEG, for hosting me as a guest. And to all of my listeners, tune in next week. This is Sherita J. Herring on Beverly Hills to Barnyard.